So this is the Check the Truck podcast. I'm Josh.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Alec, the recurring nightmare of the Check for Chaps podcast.
That's right, but also convenient, editing slave. So we'll keep you on.
I'm more than happy. We like the big projects when we need to take down something truly monolithic.
I've got a mic arm. That's about it. That's what I bring to the table.
And it's more than either of us put together. So what we're here to do today is watch Man of Steel.
The DVD menu is currently looping in the background.
I'm already excited.
Josh is the only one of us who's never seen this, and I think me and Alec have both probably not seen it since 2013 when it first came out.
Then yes, that would be 2013 since it first came out.
However, unlike Alec, I've been thinking about it nearly constantly since, whereas I think Alec probably just forgot about it.
I only think about it every Burns night, as it is today, because of known Scottish man Henry Cavil.
Here's to known Scottish man
Here's to
Henry
known
Cavil.
Scottish man Henry Cavil.
Yeah.
I've been avoiding this film like rent arrears since when it came out. I mean, people always say the same thing. It's like, oh, you haven't seen it. I'm like, no. Why? Do you like it? And they're like, no, it's shit. It's like Bird Box. They're trying to take like the blindfold off me.
The reason I want to show you this over probably any other superhero film is because it's just so unlike any other superhero film. Like, unlike those Marvel films, they sort of like stay very close. This is clearly someone's vision, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
I don't hate it.
No, neither do I.
I think there are some bits that I get terribly bored in, but that's because I have the attention span of a child.
That's my preface to it as well. I don't hate it either. I think it's very consistent. It's probably the most consistent DC film until Aquaman.
So what are your recollections of Man of Steel?
So
What about it stands out in the memory cores of Aaron Chapman?
So in
The memory codex.
1 second, I'm going for my databanks. I've searched every memory I have. Libertarianism is the main thing. Zack Snyder's ideology, I think, really permeates through this.
I can't work out if Superman's a fash or a socialist in this one.
Normally, he's definitely more of like a government stooge fascist. In this one, he's real libertarian, in my opinion. He doesn't want to bail people out, essentially. And I think this is why the DCEU goes so weird, because when this is your like benchmark, what do you do? And yeah, that's why I'm excited to see. I'm interested to actually recollect as to where this all began.
You see, my recollections are much more Michael Shannon good.
Yeah, I agree. Michael Shannon is good.
Michael Shannon good. Krypton stuff completely batshit and borderline impenetrable. Russell Crowe's sort of cameos are very funny.
How's his accent?
Is that common? Is it superbly Australian or is it just kind of out of space?
It's out of spacey. He's trying to be out of spacey.
Yeah.
Obviously, it bleeds through because he's just Russell Crowe.
There's a particularly jarring shot in the finale, which is too long, where Superman gets thrown for a well-known American brand. This is a weird thing to put in your. Basically, small-town America is a product that is placed in this film.
Yeah.
So what is in the Midwest? If there's a Midwest, smash it up with CGI for a bit.
I was going to say, I would like to just say about my experience leading up to this film. It kind of came very close to seeing this, because when the first trailer for this movie dropped, I went absolutely bananas for it. I thought it looked incredible. I just felt like everything that I knew about Superman, maybe not a lot, but I felt like it seemed like it was going to be this really interesting approach to the character. They'll follow you, Clark, they will stumble, they will fall, but in time, they will join you in the sun and you will help them accomplish wonders.
Yep.
That teaser...
It's a beautiful line.
There you go. So I still remember it, paraphrasing, but...
Except parts of this film really permeate, and I loved Superman as a kid. And yeah, it was just, I was really excited, and it wasn't what I was expecting, but it's always stood with me.
Who's Clark?
No, I don't. He works for the Daily Planet. He's not worth mentioning. Just a mild-mannered reporter, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
What you need to focus on is Superman.
It's weird that they keep cutting back to Clark.
I just don't understand.
Like
It's weird because he looks a little bit like Superman.
Yeah,
Obviously
he's wearing glasses.
I think they got the actor's brother to play him or something.
It's the other Scottish man, John Cavil.
Angus Cavil.
Yeah.
What are you expecting going in? As you penetrate Man of Steel,
I'm really okay. So during the lovemaking with this film we're about to have, the thing I'm most looking forward to, and I hope it doesn't let me down, is really heavy-handed Zack Snyder version of libertarianism.
Nice,
because obviously he's. Sorry, Zack.
We love you.
I've given you a lot of money in my life, so not so sorry. But he's not a really intelligent guy. But I know he really loves libertarianism, so. I'm interested to see because it's a very selfish approach to take with a Superman movie. He's like, I'm going to make him a libertarian. I mean, I don't think he ever really has been before.
Nope.
So this is only satisfying Zack Snyder and like any of Ayn Rand's descendants.
There's the scene where Superman dismantles a food stamp office. It's not like he's just flying around zapping Medicaid recipients from above.
There is that weird scene where he hands out like copies of the Fountainhead, though. I thought that was really out of place. He does have a really like fraught relationship with the government in this, which I always thought was interesting, because obviously Superman's like, quite famously pro-government in most of sort of like the
Dark Knight Returns.
the 60s to the 80s material. Dark Knight Returns, obviously, which Zack Snyder would go on to ape next time, but wouldn't work because he did this.
1 to 10, what level of beefcake do you reckon Henry Cavill's going to be in?
I mean, it's so difficult because beefcaking is like going through the roof year on year, but
10 is The Rock.
It has changed lots since 2013 as well.
If 10 is The Rock, then I'd say he's a 7.
He's a 7 beefcake.
But a solid 7.
We'll come back to this segment during the main review.
Yeah.
Cool.
He's got biceps that I want to fall asleep in. Let's go.
Join us after.
Welcome back to Check the Tracks podcast, even though it's only been approximately 2 seconds for you. We've now watched the film Man of Steel.
We have. And we've also drank quite heavily.
It's approximately 5 hours later.
Yep.
Yes.
On this, Robbie Burns night.
It is Robert Burns'
The night of Scotland.
We actually entered the opposite of like a time compression. We entered a time like
Time dilation.
time dilation. We ended up taking us 5 hours to watch a 2-hour film.
Before the break, I asked Josh, on a beefcake scale, where would you place Henry Cavill? And he answered 7. Having seen the film, where would you now place Henry Cavill's beefcake rating?
12.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a record beefcake scale.
Batman. So, Batfleck may look larger than him in BVS or whatever the fuck, but I don't care because this man
Body versus strength.
He's got enormous mass and he's chiseled at the same time. It shouldn't be possible, but it is. The Superman exists and he is American, to quote Watchmen. So this was literally like the strongest 3 out of 5 I've ever seen. What I really liked about it is there were no jokes in it. Like, there may have been 1 or 2. Unlike all of this other, like, superhero bullshit, it was just like, hi, it's a movie about an alien who's a god. I was like, okay. And, like, it kept my interest. It didn't panic and be like, underwear.
Yeah. I agree, and I thought, like, so when obviously in 2013, the MCU was just going up. I think 2013 was the year that saw for the Dark World and Iron Man 3. Yeah, I agree. Like, having been obviously exposed to now 6 years of Marvel cultural dominance thereafter, it was so nice to not see any bathos in this. Like, no deliberate relieving of tension.
So the thing that's interesting about this is as it was released so soon after, you know, a million Nolan movies came out, is that maybe if I saw it at the time I would have found it quite tiresome, but, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, it's really refreshing. And it may not have been then it may have been quite tedious, but no, as I see it now. Again, by the way, this movie is quite flawed. Yeah. And, like, there's so much, there's almost nothing you could name in it that couldn't be improved.
Yeah,
apart from Henry Cavill's raw sexuality.
I think Henry Cavill is a good Superman. I know people dislike him, and obviously I think people dislike him because he's been in the period between Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. People like kind of quite liked him, but then obviously thereafter he's become a bit of a joke, and I don't think that's fair.
No, because particularly in this, the thing is, Superman is a blank slate. He is just the concept of America with biceps.
I agree.
And I think that he does the best he can with that.
I think that saying he does the best he can is almost damning him with faint praise, because I think that he really seemed preternaturally virtuous in this film in a way that, you know, normally the beefcake actors don't. I mean, he just had a look on his face that made it seem like, despite the fact that maybe it wasn't always earned at times, he didn't want bad things to happen to people.
I would disagree that he's a blank slate. I do agree that Superman is obviously, you can do many things with him. I think what they do in this that's really interesting is they talk about like how the world would react to him, and they don't always do that right. Like you said, no part of this film is done entirely right, but they do stumble onto some really interesting questions with him. Like they talk about what it means for sort of like religion, and they talk about what it means for sort of humanity developing as a whole. It works, and I damn him with faint praise. I don't think he does the best with it. I think he does a damn good job of it. But I think there's so many interpretations of Superman, and this one wasn't one that people were comfortable with or familiar with.
Yeah.
Because this has existed in the comics, but this doesn't really show up that often. Like you said, like he's normally like unflinchingly good, and he's normally a lot more established. He's normally been Superman for a while. He's already a reporter.
Yeah.
Papa Kent doesn't normally teach him not to save people. He's normally sort of like, this is your sort of, you should do this. This is what's right.
I feel that the thing with Kent in this is that he is so... Is the film portraying him as wrong? When I saw this again just a few minutes ago, time travel, was that he is incorrect the entire film, but he's not portrayed as, I guess, bad.
I know what
he's
you
not
mean.
denigrated for that
Well, I think
reasoning.
he's come to a decision based on sort of fear and protection. And I don't think that necessarily. I don't think the film portrays him as a bad man for that.
America in the 20s, protectionism.
Yeah, no, and also now America in sort of like the
Politics.
the 2020s maybe as
Yeah.
well. It's
Post-Iraq,
Woodrow Wilson too.
deciding that intervention is not always the best idea.
exactly.
Fears about the way that people will view you or the damage that you may do if you decide to use your power.
well, there's a scene.
Was it the IHOP scene?
No, it's the scene where he's talking about the cattle drowning downstream, and I think that really sums it up for him. You know, he wants Clark to save people, but he says that saving people comes at a cost. Like, there's always someone you don't save, and that's what the bad guys focus on as well. And I think there are themes in this film. Like, they're definitely going for something, and I think definitely more so than BVS because that was written by two different people, and definitely more than Justice League because that was written by two different people.
Big Brother.
Definitely more than Suicide Squad because that was written by like 17 people. It's
everything that's wrong with this movie has been treaded and retreaded for so long. So the reason that we're saying these things is because we just want to talk about where it was going.
People are still releasing articles about this film to this day, like today.
And I don't let's cash in on that.
Well, no, but I feel like it's been so long since people actually watched this. Like when I was reading that article, I didn't get the sense that they'd watched this recently. I had the feeling that they were retreading what everyone says about it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good to actually go back to the source material, look at what it is about.
Yeah.
Because for so long people talk about this film mainly in the context of the 5 films now that precede it.
The Christopher Reeve-esque Superman films,
Yeah,
even if they don't have him in them.
Yeah, and also the 5 films that can follow after it.
Yeah.
It's a film defined by other films, by comic books, and I think it's good to just watch it, and especially if someone hasn't watched it, which is why I wanted to watch it with you.
Yeah.
It's important to just see what it is on screen.
Do you think that is necessarily achievable? Because in the last one I was in,
Spider-Verse,
I think I dropped the point of, is it possible to see these films anymore, given how saturated we are with superhero films in their own context?
But remember,
And
this film...
I feel that Superman as a concept is so well known. It's like Spock. Everyone knows who Spock is, whether or not they fully understand what it is or not.
Yeah.
Everyone goes into a thing going, I know what Spock is. He is the logical alien. He is the elf.
Oh.
He is Leonard Nimoy who wants to take a picture of naked women for no reason.
Agree,
Superman is super strong, super fast, blah blah blah, cape, underpants.
But what's important about this? So point A is that this film was released, this was the first movie of the DC universe, so at that point it wasn't a universe. In fact, Zack Snyder didn't really even make this with the universe in mind, which you can really tell. But yeah, so like Zack Snyder makes this without any universe in mind. Like we get 2 nods, I think there's a LexCorp truck
That's right,
and
yeah.
a Bruce Wayne satellite. Yeah. The point I was saying earlier
Yeah.
is that it's the film that sort of like sets the DCEU. Not only that, it's a film that subverted so many expectations up until then about what Superman was. The Red Letter Media has that joke about Grandpa sitting down to watch the Christopher Reeves that he remembers, and then it just plays the Zod clip of the neck breaking.
This man's not crippled.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Christopher, if you're out there listening.
Influence thereafter. I think it's got a real unique spot in history because it is so talked about, because it's like almost an easy jab. Like you can go back to this. Zack Snyder's now everyone's favourite whipping boy.
Yeah.
I think you can really... Everyone's sort of like... The roots of the DCU's demise were planted in this film, and I don't.
Completely disagree.
Not fair.
The amount that the films don't pay attention to this film, like in tonality, plot, and any like artifice of the design, bode fair for this film. Like you said, Suicide Squad doesn't look like it could take place in this universe.
No.
Wonder Woman, kinda, barely.
Because I was complaining loudly watching this film. The Marvel films are obviously all shot on the same soundstage with the same colour grading. But I can buy the Marvel stuff being all interconnected better.
It's kind of done by the same teams as well.
I couldn't articulate properly why, because I'm an idiot.
Well, so one of the things
you two are like proper film guys. Probably you could, but with the DC stuff in particular, I can't really buy the example Aaron used. I can't buy Captain Boomerang, the fucking Australian cunt, Boomerang, and likes to fuck pink unicorns in the same universe as Aquaman.
Oh my god.
I can't buy them in the same universe because one is super gritty and miserable, like the Batman. He
like
does the
Batfleck.
he does a bad version of the Trinity up in the wall flippy kicking maneuver.
He brands people.
Yeah, I can't buy that in the same world as what are we, some kind of Suicide Squad?
Yeah,
it's just bollocks.
Margot Robbie walking around in hot pants.
And I feel that part of the DC problem is that they try and be more experimental. They try and push the boundaries a bit. but they keep fucking it up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Marvel plays it safe. So one of the reasons all these films look the same is they're all shot in digital. Every second unit action is the same. All the sort of FX are done by the same studio. So it's very consistent. It is sort of like a factory. Whereas all these films, they cobble together Zack Snyder and co, David Ayer and co, Patty Jenkins and co, and they make a film.
So I'd say it's only Marvel only play it safe in the sense that they found a style that works and will stick with it. It's not playing it safe.
Safe is the wrong word. It's they play it smart.
Yeah, they know
they're
what
business people.
They know what works and they will stick with it.
Could I quickly respond to that? I'd actually like Conviction. I don't think that DC are being daringly experimental from what I've seen. I just think they're being slapdash.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't trying to imply that they're like the David Lynch of superhero films.
No, I think they're experimenting.
But in the sense
they are trying to, because they're trying to replicate the success of Marvel.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this film again meets a crossroads. It's that DC wanted two things. They wanted
money.
Well, they wanted one thing, money. But to get that, they took two paths.
Yeah.
One was the Nolan-verse deconstructionist take on Superman, but at the same time they wanted a universe. And as that great saying goes, you can't have your cake and eat it. And they tried both, and they suffered for it quite significantly.
I feel like if you want to, like, when we say experimental, I don't think me and Aaron are arguing that they are
avant-garde.
Yeah. We say experimental in the constraints of a,
experiments can fail.
Yeah, a consumerist film industry which is trying to make the most money.
Well, no, I actually I really like to talk a little bit more about the political themes of this movie. So,
well, you can't. So let's move on to the score.
Go on, sorry. Political themes. Let's do it.
So, what I was expecting from this movie didn't actually get, and in a nice way. I thought I was going to get a really ham-fisted Ayn Rand face. I thought because I knew that there was going to be a scene in this where young Superman would save someone and his dad would be like, "You shouldn't have done it."
They were Medicaid receivers.
Yeah. No, I thought it was going to be because like libertarians are really ahistorical and mostly like when you get to the hardcore end of them, don't even think that America should have gotten involved in World War II. That's how hardcore these people are. The thing is, though, is when the movie was actually happening, basically the themes in the first two acts to me were all about power. So there's Jor-El says to Kal-El, he's like, the government tried population control and it made everything go real bad. That's funny, that's some libo shit. But, so that's where a really powerful state tried to do something to help and then caused massive desolation, destroyed a civilization. But then also to the point where with young...
Brexit.
Oh my god. With young Superman, okay, well, now I'm going to try and fix something by saving a bus full of children. He's like, you shouldn't do that because that's going to hurt you by revealing yourself. As you've already touched on, it's about the economies of power and when to act and when not to act, and when acting will hurt and when acting will help. Mm-hmm. But what happened in the third act, while I was engaged, it was just a fight. And it should have made a bigger deal out of him revealing himself.
You need to tie action to theme. Like it's got to be like. And I know I like to harp on about Mad Max Fury Road, but it's got to.
Who doesn't?
It's got to develop both the theme and the story. And while the fight is about whether he's going to kill everyone on Earth or not. Yeah. So in the loosest way possible, it's connected to the story. There's no stakes in it other than can he beat him, and that's not a good stake.
It's deeply compared to what was set up. It's deeply black and white because it's like
a good stake is obviously like the Dark Knight. Like you know that like you don't know that the Joker's boat won't explode. But in this you're fairly sure that if it's going to come down to a fist fight over Metropolis, then Superman's probably got it.
So I just wanted to say, coming into this, I was thinking this is going to have loads of bullshit Snyder things in it. You know what? The sloppy stuff in it was very easily traceable back to Christopher Nolan, because he's a very emotional man who likes very heavy-handed imagery and storytelling.
Christian.
Oh.
Yeah.
Christopher.
Yeah, you're onto something. So, the scene in which Superman goes to speak to a priest about...
Just drops in.
Like Daredevil.
This, my friend, is Nolan up the arsehole. So, he walks in and he talks about how the dangers of revealing himself to these people, because obviously that will mean that it would be an act of self-sacrifice. While he's talking...
Just so you know, he made eye contact with the microphone.
I did. I looked right at all of you.
I see you.
As this is happening...
I know what you're doing.
Okay. I thought that this was too much to throw into the film at this point, because they had a lot else going on, and then they decided, because it was the thing to do...
If this film could be accused of anything... Throwing too many things into the pot would not be one of it.
Okay, fine. I would say that the problem with including, like, Christianity as a theme in something is it kind of supersedes everything else that's going on.
Because I kind of feel like, particularly in a Western film-going audience, Christianity is almost assumed to be the default.
That's fine, but I would also say that, you know, from my perspective, just understanding the way that these things conflict with each other. Yeah, like people expect to see Christian imagery in something. That doesn't mean that if you analyse it, it doesn't clash with the other.
Of course it does.
Yeah,
like the scene where
the
he's literally like
well, also
fucking cross-eagle before an explosion.
Yeah.
Well, can I just...
It'd be like when not Morpheus, the other one, the white one,
Neo.
spread eagle crucifixy on the Matrix cables,
and then a cross of light happens.
Yeah,
on his
like
chest.
that is just too much.
If I can just say, I think that not only does the Christianity clash like in the film, it clashes with like libertarian belief, and specifically Zack Snyder and like Zack Snyder's biggest influence, Ayn Rand's belief.
Yeah.
Because Zack Snyder's probably not spent a day in his life thinking about God.
No.
Like
he is a godless man.
Like Zack Snyder has spent the same amount of time thinking about God as Kanye West has thought about politics, which is at most 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then he like moves on back to like his copy of The Fountainhead, and that's fine because that's what he digs. But like to include that, because this film isn't about this film is about man and man's reaction to a greater power, and that there's a subtle difference to that, and that is continued in sort of like an abortive way in Batman vs Superman.
Oh, is that with the statues where it's like God is?
No, it's that bit with...
So, the problem is, I started the sentence with like in Batman vs Superman, and then realised I cannot remember anything about Batman vs Superman apart from Save Martha, and I can't remember anything else. But there was a statue of Superman with something bad spray painted on it.
That's not the bit I'm referring to. That is a thing. But I'm talking about the bit where Jesse Eisenberg points to the painting of God descending from heaven.
Oh, fuck that! Fuck off! I know that bit. That's bullshit.
But what I mean is that is the sort of ideological bent they're going for, and that's like so contrary from what Zack Snyder believes in, and as we've confirmed before, David Gascoigne believes in nothing. Here's at you, David, coming for you.
That kill you.
I can't believe you're going to kill David Tennant.
David. Actually, I was talking to a friend about David Esquire, and they typed in David Esquire, and it made me think of like him as sort of like a country gentleman, and I said, I just feel that again, like you can tell that there are 3 chefs in this kitchen. there is David Esquire, who believes in nothing but making a terrible Superman film. There is Zack Snyder, who genuinely believes in getting his sort of like anarcho-libertarian vision across. And
what if government didn't exist? Also, slow-motion anime girls. I directed Super Punch. That's my impression of.
I'm very smart. And then obviously you've got Then you've got Christopher Nolan, who starts with "I'm very smart" and is definitely more on the point. And then he talks about sort of like you said, like Christianity and humanity.
Years of his emotional repression. The problem with him is he represses his emotions for so long and like doesn't have sex with his wife. And then he's writing a script, and then suddenly
the Elton John defense.
And then suddenly and this will be if you wouldn't mind the resolution to my point.
Yep.
Superman is sitting in a church talking to a pastor, and behind him is a stained glass window of Jesus Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane. In this scene, because I know you two are heathen atheists from birth, anyone with even like a bit of a religious upbringing will know, Jesus pleads with God, himself and his Father, asking there must be some other way prior to the crucifixion and the betrayal of Judas, right? He is at that time, with that ridiculous stained glass window behind him, asking a pastor what he would do in that situation. Should he give himself up to Zod? Fucking ridiculous.
I mean, it's very on the nose.
Yeah.
Is the pasta fusilli or penne?
So just to confirm, Alec has been sitting on that for roughly 15 seconds.
I saw at least of 20 minutes.
I saw his eyes like light up.
I'm gonna fucking kill myself. I have said everything I need to say.
Okay.
Allow it to be wrapped up. In the words of Jesus Christ, it is finished.
So before we move on, before we move on to our last segment, I want to do a quick rundown on what you thought of the characters.
I'm sorry, I've absolutely ruined this episode by the fucking like degeneration of its burns.
It's alright, mate, because you're going to be editing, so you can.
Oh shit!
Perry White,
and also behaved in a confusing way about part. He picked up the motivation of the dead father when he had no reason to.
Just for thematic purposes, but like thematic purposes when you've already just established those, like we have those fresh in our mind, we can easily see the counter argument to that and not just the argument again.
I feel that from a newspaper editor perspective, he went from aliens don't exist, that's bullshit, to we need to run away, we're full of aliens, extremely quickly.
Yeah, he must have. I mean, egg was on his face when the aliens started blowing up the office next door.
As a large, bald man, I feel that...
You feel a kinship with Lawrence
I felt a kinship with Lawrence Fishburne.
Fair.
Because he looks similarly to what I do when I try and dress myself up for a job interview, which is
in ill-fitting suits.
A child in the dock for some sort of crime. Like, there's a bit where Lawrence Fishburne is trying to lever out a colleague whose name is
unnecessary.
Woman. And he's trying
to
leave her out from the 9/11 rubble.
Yeah.
And it's really good.
Yeah.
It cuts from the dubstep space
I thought
machine.
that was one of the most genuine portrayals of people on the ground. There were two people undertaking a desperate task to save someone.
It was weird that it was Perry, but that's fair enough. I clearly
because he's a good boss.
I think it's weird.
The only good boss under capitalism.
Up until that point, for me, Perry had been so slapdash that the fact that he was doing this was
okay. I mean, he was basically a fill-in for whenever there needed to be a human witnessing something. That
he was basically J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
But not.
But not as nowhere near as well developed. So next character is Lois Lane, LLAA.
Fine.
I heard praise for this movie around the time it came out from feminists. That if you really thought about it, she was the only. Well, essentially, being from what I read about it, it was that technically she was one of the only characters who really had a lot of agency. So it was, I guess. No, but that's the thing. It was kind of upsold to me.
As much as anyone has agency in this film.
Yeah, she really stood to upstage the discovery of the Fortress of Solitude for me. Then she kind of found Superman in a fairly uninteresting montage.
Yeah. 30 seconds of question asking.
Jump in briefly for...
No, go ahead, because basically I wasn't massively into her.
Sorry, for a question, was the Fortress of Solitude in this movie's context the bigger Krypton spspaceship? Because he lands on Earth in the Krypton sperm.
So he lands on... So for official terms, he lands on Earth in his pod. What he finds...
In his puddle jumper.
What he finds in the ice is that's meant to invoke the Fortress of Solitude is something called the Scout Ship.
An Al-Kesh.
Now, the Scout Ship was what, as General Zod explains, or is it Jor-El explains, they sent out hundreds of these scout ships to scan every planet for life that would suit Kryptonians. They found the Kryptonian ship worked out that this planet wasn't that good. Though obviously, as it turns out, fucking excellent.
But then kind of crashed the ship into it?
Well, no, but then the ship was just left there because the costs of repatriating it presumably outweigh you just launch hundreds of miles.
And I don't think they care about being discovered by humans.
Like the way that we don't care about Voyager crashing into any...
Do you mean Voyager the probe or Voyager the Federation starship?
We cared a lot about Voyager crashing into because obviously Janeway captured our hearts.
Yeah,
but,
rip.
It's called the Scout Ship. It serves the purpose of the Fortress of Solitude in this one. Had this been any normal franchise, it obviously would have been his base operations thereafter. But he had a pretty hectic schedule here after, so he didn't really get to do that.
He was busy repossessing his mum's farm from the bank.
Oh yeah, that happens. You got that to look forward to.
Dying. Something else, probably.
So I want to keep it. So no, it's like Lois Lane. I wasn't massively compelled, and I wasn't massively uncompelled. Who do you want to do next?
That's fine. The next one is obviously Colonel Hardy.
Christopher Maloney, the world's best butt, title winner.
Fun. So because he represented to me all of impotent, but eventually like cooperative small powers of the state.
I think he's like one of the more libertarian serving characters in this film. He's meant to be sort of like almost a straw man for, like you said, like sort of like the unthinking government man who will eventually bow to dynamic individualism, Superman.
He's just kind of army guy.
Yeah, and also like Alec had a fucking boss man observation in which that he facilitates every role in this film. He is both a science officer, he is a pilot, he's the drone guy,
he turns up in Canada as like the guy leading the expedition to discover the Fortress of Solitude. He turns up in a little bird,
UAV,
something like that. And then later on he's flying a plane, and while he's flying the plane he's like, mate, take the stick, I've got to go do some plot in the cargo hold.
He's like, I've got to go talk to the load master about a load.
Yeah.
He's a...
Loadmaster. Loadmaster is an incredible terminology, and I hope to Christ, who in this case is Superman, the US military genuinely has a rank where they go, Loadmaster, how's the load? And that person has to unironically go, the load is secure. and at no point break character.
Or break eye contact.
Christopher Maloney, who you may know from Law and Order SVU.
I haven't watched that.
Yeah, basically, he's the army
I got
guy.
comic books to read.
You are an aberration.
How very... He's correct. But Christopher Maloney is the army guy. He can do everything. He's on the ground as like the second lead officer. He's in the air as a pilot.
The thing
he's in the air as a pilot of a helicopter.
He's with the FBI as well, I've got to say that.
FBI,
arrest Amy Adams.
Yeah.
pilot of both a helicopter and a plane. I will fully admit, here are my cards on the table. I don't know how these machines work. But helicopters and planes, very different machines. One goes chocka chocka chocka, and one goes
I would sign off on that analysis.
How can he pilot both? Doesn't matter. Now he's going to fight one of the Kryptonians with a knife.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. He does get into 2 knife fights.
Yeah, neither of which happen.
With Ange Trowell, who by the way, like, I know she doesn't probably get enough screen time in this, but as a personal fan of her like career, I think she's really fucking excellent in this film. Like a nice, like, not really focused on supporting character. I was saying earlier that I like that she actually gets into a fight with male characters, which the Marvel films don't do as a rule of thumb.
to do, which is pathetic.
Scarlet Witch punches Vision at one point.
Yeah, but that's spousal abuse. They're okay with that.
Yeah, it's
I
domestic
can't
abuse.
think of anything else.
No, there's nothing else. That's because they
Please
always.
move on. No, don't, because I'm wrong.
He is wrong.
But
Look,
yeah,
at
and
least I
that's-
can admit it.
Sometimes.
But yeah, I just wanted to sort of like quickly go through the characters we might have missed. There's no other really interesting characters. Mama Kent's not really developed in this.
No,
Do you want to talk about? I think we've already talked quite enough about the dads, because
Yes.
obviously the space dad and farm dad.
Let's do
kind of,
Zod.
oh yeah, let's go on. Michael Shannon.
Yeah.
What do you think?
The thing is, as soon as you get Michael Shannon in your project, you know he's going to outweigh everybody else, because that's his
He's
job.
an actor.
Michael Shannon is a thespian. And even in this, with his weird bowl cut and his stupid CGI costume, he will dominate the screen. In the same way that Peter Capaldi's the best Doctor because he's an actual proper theatre actor.
God, someone just lay this guy out. I cannot believe
Like,
this.
Michael Shannon, he's just the best actor in this. Even though his
I'd agree with
character's motivations are, I am angry.
Well, I mean, so
That is it.
Zod's motivations are essentially at the beginning are summarised as he wants to prevent degenerate bloodlines from ruining Krypton.
But also ecology, but also not.
I
It
mean,
kind of ties into the whole, the initial Krypton scene is, it
so-
might as well be made like a sheet of plate metal,
Well,
and someone's going, what card's behind the metal? You don't know. The whole initial scene is completely fucking incomprehensible.
Well, it's comprehensible, and I agree. And this is, we were talking about this as the film started. I still think if I ever had to do anything like this with Superman, I would never introduce Krypton first, because that's not really what Clark Kent is about, because he doesn't know what Krypton is. He's never seen it. That's the point. He is the son of Krypton. He's the last son of Krypton. He's from Krypton. He's not of Krypton.
Yeah, he's really...
He's got no reference to the culture, and that's part of what General Zod even says this. He says he's not, he doesn't understand our ways, and that's it. While he is the sole determiner of Krypton's survival, he has a new race, and that race is humanity.
Krypton is why he is Superman, but in the essence of who Clark Kent is, it is irrelevant. He is who he is because of his mother and his father, who are human and teach him to be a good person. Unless in this film, in which case Kevin Costner's like, don't save anyone because they're all bellends.
He says maybe you shouldn't.
But so guys, therefore, based off what you've said, does not exist to serve Clark's character.
The Krypton
So-
factor.
What did it serve? I think it served to have an action-packed open sci-fi.
No, I'll tell you what, in the latest timeline it should serve, it's supposed to serve to let us know what Zod's motivations are, and that's where it fails. It's because it introduces the villain, and it ostensibly tells you why he's doing what he's doing, but it does it in a really mashed together way. Like, he basically shows up and says, eugenics, pure bloodlines, blah, 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 blah.
He bursts in from the Hell Dimension and goes, Hitler, Hitler, Hitler.
Yeah.
But no, you're serious, because he bursts into the throne room, he shoots someone in the face, and he goes, I love eugenics!
Yeah, he does.
It's like,
Exactly.
It's like,
He just goes, I am Hitler. Hitler is good.
He's like, this is a compelling
Take
villain.
that
So,
out.
I think this is really important, because, like we said, Superman has no understanding of this context, and it's up to General Zod to do it. What we have here is we have the film telling us why we should care about Superman. And I don't know about you two, maybe you don't agree with me, but I don't need a reason to care about Superman.
No, he's always sick, mate.
I care about Superman. And that's one of the few characters where it's like, sure, this is the Boy Scout. You don't need to show me that he's got an entire race. He's got, what do they say? At one point they say he's got 1 billion people in his DNA.
Uploaded into his
like,
body.
It's like, I don't care. This man...
Hidden in his body.
This man is a paragon of good. I want him to succeed.
You see, I kind of feel like with Superman, you kind of have to work almost harder. Because you can't just go...
I disagree.
I mean, that's fine.
No, but yeah,
like,
okay, so what, is it because he's too good?
It's wrong.
Do you not like him being too...
I just don't feel
good?
that a character can be...
This is the age-old argument about Superman.
Is that can you have a character that is naturally good?
I think you can. I think you can only because... And again, this is what's... I mean, I've got many comics over there that go into this. I've been reading them. I think
pass me one.
You've got... No, you'll ruin them. You'll get your side.
I'll get my disgusting socialist hands all over.
But you've got... You've got a character here who is supposed to... Like that line says, that beautiful line about you. They will join you in the sun. You've got this character here who's supposed to be...
The Messiah?
Yeah. No, not the Messiah.
Sorry, literally the Superman.
Yeah,
the
exactly. But he's divorced. The Messiah is like implies divinity. He's supposed to just be a good. He's supposed to be a powerful good. That is more complex an idea than people give it credit for, in my opinion. And like that's why he's really, as ham-fisted as it is, that's why when they're bullying him, he's got a copy of Plato in his hand. And I think that's important. And I don't think you need to make me empathise with Superman, but what you do need to make me do is empathise with Zod, because that's what makes a compelling villain. I need to understand why Zod is doing this. I think I've just had an idea, tell me if I'm wrong here, I think the easier way to, or the most compelling way to do this would be, you have Clark Kent, he discovers the scout ship, maybe the scout ship tells him for whatever reason the story from Zod's side, and then he doesn't get the natural narrative, and then he has to fight against something.
Which sort of happens at one point, by the way. He is in a situation where he has to let Zod say what has happened before.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
Is that the strange sort of hallucination sequence when
where
he goes to the ship and he sort of passes out.
A weird way to do it.
And then they're like, Michael Shannon, do some acting for us, and he goes.
But we'll have some underwear in the background.
Oh, no worries, mate. I've got the fucking acting.
Also, your CGI cape will be fluttering. He's like, well, that doesn't bother me.
I mean,
but carry on.
No. That's my my point. I think, quote Tolkien, evil is the absence of good. Yeah. And I think that when you have something like Zod, I think that's what's important, and I think you need to expose Superman to that. And I think in the same way that Kevin Costner's you have two themes in this. You have Kevin Costner's "Do you want to reveal yourself?" and you have General Zod versus Superman. Where do your loyalties lie? And I think if you just focus on those two, you get a much tighter sort of film, and you get a much tighter argument, and the two of them feed into each other quite nicely. Yeah. And I think it's a shame they didn't do that. And
So you don't think this film nailed that particularly? Do you think
it doesn't really nail? It doesn't nail much. The thing is, like you said, that's why it's the best 6 out of 10 because it doesn't quite do anything right.
Do you feel any of the DC films? Or any of the Marvel films really nail that conflict between villain and superhero?
Wonder Woman came close until the last 40 minutes.
Yeah, I think this is the problem with all the DC films, is that they overblow the climactic finish.
And Aquaman didn't even try, in my opinion.
When I was watching this not that long ago, as I was saying to Aaron and Josh and the other person who was present, I was bored by 2/3 of the way in. It's when they start having the punch up in the small town, right, I get it. Please finish this film. But there's still a whole act to go.
Yep.
So
a whole lot of punches.
Yeah. So Hooperman, he does lose. He's really good at hoops. So Hooperman and Superman. Hooperman dies very early on. His hula hoop pounder.
It's actually him and Detective Chimp. They go on one last joyride.
Well, I remember. So he hulaed into the tripod to make it explode, and then the blast radius. He was vaporized.
But he goes, "I was half-baked at best." Bye.
I wonder if that's just a thing with the sense of viewing it from outside the context of being an American. Is that seeing an American Midwest town smashed up to me means nothing. You can show me as many.
Well, you're actually laughing because you're like, IHOP.
Lol, friends. If you show me an IHOP or a Sears being smashed up next to, let's say, a Greg's or a Maplin's, if there's a Greg's and Maplin's being smashed up, I'm like, oh my god, he's defiled the sacred institution that is Greg's.
I have to say, you know full well that
Greg's is awesome.
If it's that is given.
They're also made of Kevlar, so they're actually.
If you swapped out every American city for English cities or British cities, in all the blockbusters you've seen in the past 20 years, it would have no more effect on you. It's completely.
I mean, that's true because there have been various films where they've shown that England, like London being destroyed, like that's not London.
No, I think he's on
you
something.
You can tell it's not London because no one's looking at the destruction.
I think it's the thing that I think Alex onto is that Superman stands for truth, justice, and the American way.
Okay.
And that's very important. That is part of it, and that's the reason why things like Red Sun. No. That's why it's important because it's all about the context Superman is raised in, and he is raised in an American context. Like Alex was saying earlier, that American context can sometimes be imperialism, and that context can sometimes be sort of like your gosh damn tootin' neighbourly Kansas people.
Yeah.
And I think that is a discrepancy, and I guess that might be something that is lost overseas. I don't know particularly. I certainly don't think I'd empathise more if you were smashing through a Greggs. I want to see it just to see what it looks like.
Because I kind of understand.
Maybe there's like sausage rolls flying everywhere.
From like a very simple sort of emotional reaction. Like I don't give a fuck if Superman flies through an IHOP.
But the idea is you're supposed to care because it's his hometown, but we don't set up his hometown.
I don't understand what an IHOP is.
Yeah, we don't see any positive emotions connected with his hometown. Like if
we should have seen him working in the local store. There were no scenes in actual the town centre of Smallville until they started beating each other up in it, and that was an issue.
And that means you don't have a connection to that town unless, like you said, you come from an identical American town out in the Midwest.
And I know the American market is big. There's a lot of people in America, for better or for worse. There's a lot of people in America.
We love you.
And that sort of Midwest, sort of small town mentality is important, particularly for filmmaking. But it would be like making a film based on the concept of what is Superman smashed up as a middling to low Chinese town. As me, as a British person, as me as an English person, I don't understand the connection. Okay. Like, what is an IHOP?
But surely is it not the
Alec, I want to ask you something. You mind?
No, go.
Yeah, you want to ask you?
Sorry, I take no questions. I'm leaving. Sorry.
No,
yeah.
so Alec, if the
Hello.
as you were saying there, I was thinking that maybe one of the problems with the film was that it wasn't enough and the American way. And would you have felt a little bit more close to it, even though you're not an American, if it had emphasised the American nature of Superman and the American nature of the setting not in a problematically nationalist, but in like the positivities of their historic philosophy that have informed Superman as a character? Because I'm thinking that maybe that may have made me a little bit more into it. I was already into it.
I think if you showed him having
implying there is a non-problematic nationalistic context.
No.
Nationalism.
I did not mean.
No, sorry, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah,
so that's me trying.
I did not. Okay,
that was me trying to be intelligent for the first time in my life.
Yeah, being low. I want the audience to know.
I feel that almost if it hadn't relied on the brands, if it was kind of like
brands was a big problem, man.
If it was the small town diner, and I know Britain doesn't quite have the same concept as small town diner, but we can identify with the local pub.
Yeah.
And I know America has a strange relationship with alcohol in a way that the British don't really. But I feel if it kept it more generic, like here's the local, the local bar.
You can do that. I mean, they show a local bar. They show that sort of like that local trucker stop.
That's funny.
But I feel like
no, you're right. You can have sort of like the baseball arena. You can have loads of like American homestays.
Yeah.
And again, you can have the baseball arena and you show him playing baseball as a kid. Maybe he can't because he hits the ball too damn hard. Like you can do so much
Bang.
The
Incredibles.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where I got that beat from. Where he runs too fast.
This film would be so much better if it was The Incredibles.
I've got it. Right. Set up and payoff. He's a kid. Kevin Costner's sitting in the rafters. He says, strike out. He has to strike out every time. They're just like...
and he's annoyed.
They're like, you're an idiot, Ken. He's like, whatever. Later in the film, bang. And it's not going to be overblown. It's going to be blink or you miss it. He's going to be punching Zod. And he's going to be punching him in that way that he flies really far and he chases him.
Which I love.
And then, in a wide shot, he's going to punch him. He's going to fly past a baseball field. He's going to fly over it, punch him again. Like, maybe at the same time someone does a home run. Except not that bit, because that would be lame.
Yeah.
But you have a baseball field in the background while he punches fucking Zod.
Kind of like how Diamond of Dreams or Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams.
You can tie the Field of Dreams and...
There are conflicts within this film between the people who wrote it and influenced it. There are certainly discrepancies between the things that were trying to espouse, and in general there was sort of like just undeveloped and unfinished themes.
Yeah, sure.
But I could never say that this was a bad film. It's certainly not as terrible as people say it. No. It's not as bad as Suicide Squad. It's nowhere near as bad as Batman vs Superman. I think it's consistent fun. I think like you said, I think it doesn't do this Marvel thing. And like I said, watching it now in 2019 of all years.
Oh my god, we're so old.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, the bit where he's running around, even though with the cape and the dog. Shit, man, I got some chills from that. I got some chills from a couple moments in this scene, and I haven't got that from any Marvel film recently.
I mean, because I asked before we went to the break, what are your opinions? And my memories are, I don't hate this film. I mean, I will, thought.
You were disengaged at one point, but that's
sure,
fine,
about 2/3 of the way through, I just check out and start chatting about my Instagram account. Yeah. But I don't hate it. There are lots of films I don't really engage with. And it doesn't make it a bad film, it just means that, I'm a pretentious asshole. Get your popcorn, watch an incredibly jacked man punch other incredibly jacked men.
And one incredibly jacked woman.
It's a better superhero film than most.
Yep. It really is, actually.
It is.
Yeah.
I think
that doesn't make it any more than a 3-star or 6 out of 10, but it's an important thing
to
remember.
I think particularly with the advent of internet criticism, and this is where I'm rowing my boat out to Hot Take Bay again.
I'm ready for it this time.
Right. Is that I feel that criticism has reached a place where either you hate it or you love it. Yeah. And anything in between has become negated and irrelevant.
Yeah, it's very
and I don't think that's fair. I think there is a place for films that sit fairly at a... Sorry, what was the rating you give this film?
6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
But the strongest 3 out of 5 or 6 out of 10 I've probably ever seen.
Yeah,
and those films are fine.
And they're important. And like you said, they're not only they're important, but they don't deserve to be like derided as everything
Of course
wrong.
they don't.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like people point at this and they're like, "Oh, it ruined Superman for a generation." It's
of course it did.
It's like no, it didn't. Like not even Superman Returns ruined Superman for a generation. Yeah. Like this was
from us. We're all roughly the same age. I mean, I'm 58. But you two are roughly the same age.
I'm actually 2000.
What was the last,
anime girl?
Like, genuinely influential Superman media that was released? Fuck and all.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, Lois and Clark, that TV show that was on when we were kids.
Like, and who watched that? Your mum.
Yeah, me and mum.
Because Clark was fit. Superman has been
I would probably argue that Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, was the last piece of...
That's a comic book. Let me argue normal people that, like, got laid and shit.
Hey.
But, like, comic books haven't been relevant to us for so long. And now they are finally deliberate, and perhaps you could argue...
you mean in a TV and film format?
Yeah,
I mean they dominate media now.
Yeah,
which is how are you going to make Superman? He's bulletproof. He's super fast. He's super strong. He
this
can
is why
see
you
through
make
walls.
You can
unless you bury all of his powers in weird.
No, you have to
psychological.
No, not at all. No, you're wrong.
The problem is, Alec, and we will end on this in this discussion of these themes. The thing about Superman is the reason people get it wrong is they have the fear that you have, and they think that he's not going to be interesting because he's so powerful. No, you don't look away from how powerful he is. You zone in on how powerful he is. You think about the consequences of having such power.
No, you do.
You zod in.
Zod in.
Did I say that?
No, you said zone, but I'm a wanker.
But what you do is, like it's like you said, with great power comes great responsibility. That sort of Spider-Man vibe.
Yeah.
What you do is
he's like Superman, but with different words.
But you, it's true. Only a few different words as well.
Go on. Take it home, Aaron. Hot take for the
Aaron,
end.
finish it!
So, what you focus on here is you focus on, like we've said throughout this, you focus on his revealing himself and hurting the ones he loves. That's a huge part of it. You focus on the fact that he can't save everyone, like with that story about the cattle ranch and how as he was having his victory cake, cattle were drowning. You focus on the idea that if he either doesn't kill or that when he kills, it tears him up. And you focus on the idea of the embodiment of good coming up with something that his strength and moral code can't deal with. Yeah. Those are the core of a good Superman. From my experience, having read a lot of Superman, those are what makes a compelling story. And this has the foundations of that, but it stops short. Yeah. And sadly, from BVS and Justice League, it only gets more diluted.
And we'll never get Man of Steel 2. We'll never get a continuation of those themes.
No,
so
we are going to continue on this journey, and we're going to see how it gets. But I think this is an important anchor point, because this is Zack Snyder's Superman vision at its purest, and this is where it all starts to go horribly, horribly wrong.
and this was Check for Traps.
Ladies and gentlemen, part 1.
Thank you
or
very
2
much for
of the DCEU extended watch.
I guess this is technically part 2, but this is the first of the sequential ones.
Yeah.
So BVS next.
BVS next.
Hope you want to tune in.
Like and subscribe. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been Alec Lambert, the recurring nightmare.
I've been Aaron Chapman, singular straight man.
I've been Joshua Jack, professional drunk. Thank you very much for your time.